You mentioned about the decentralization of power, which is very much similar to the Gandhian idea of Grama Swaraj. At the same time, you also talked about the the socialism, about socialism, right? Equality, fight against injustice, equal justice to all, everything. So can we put it like this, that Aam Aadmi is an amalgamation of Gandhian thoughts plus Marxian thoughts?
One can crudely put it like that, in the sense that Aam Aadmi Party stands for the well-being or for the benefit of the vast majority of people in this country who are mostly poor, who are mostly rural, and therefore we feel that in order to have a system which will really provide the best that can be provided for those people, you first need to decentralize power so that people can decide what they want locally for themselves. For example, in a village, every village should be free to decide how their funds are to be spent, whether they will be spent on a school or on a dispensary or on a road or whatever. So therefore, why should such things be decided by the center, and why should they be uniformly decided for every village?
You talked about electoral reforms, you talked about reforms that is required in police, in judicial system, everything. But you didn't talk about what Aam Aadmi is going to do for the minorities, for the backward class, for Adivasis, for the landless. How your party is going to address the issues of the backward, the marginalized?
Well, we believe that the most marginalized need to be taken care of first, and therefore to a large extent they will be taken care of when you have this system of what I call decentralized direct democracy, where political power to take decisions of governance should vest directly with the people who are in the majority by and large. Of course, minority protection is also required. Occasionally one can have a system in which the minorities get oppressed by a majority, so therefore you need to have some institutions which will ensure that there is no oppression of the minority by the majority. So there would have to be some things like the human rights commissions or the minority rights commissions, etc., whose job will be to ensure that there is no oppression of the minority by the majority. But by and large, this system of decentralized direct democracy will take care of the needs of the most marginalized and the poorest people in the country, because they are in the majority in this country.
While you were with the Center for Public Interest Litigation, why being the council of CPIL, you had fight for the rights of the scheduled caste tribes, and you have fought a case on the scheduled caste tribes who have turned to Christianity, and you said they are entitled for all the reservations as backward classes. So what's your perspective on reservation? Do you still hold the same view?
That case is about a provision in the Constitution Scheduled Caste Order, which says that only persons subscribing to the Hindu religion or the Sikh religion or the Buddhist religion, actually originally it was only Hindu religion, then later they added Sikh religion, and then even later they added Buddhist religion, that only persons belonging to these religions would be recognized as scheduled castes for the purpose of reservations and jobs, etc. And the emphasis on job reservations, because see, job reservations ends up benefiting only a few people, and unfortunately we have seen that persons even from backward communities, when they get into jobs, they start feeling that they have now become members of the elite, of the upper communities, so to say, and they do not thereafter. The assumption was that these people who get these jobs of governance or whatever in our ruling establishment that these persons from backward communities will ensure that the interests of the backward communities are taken care of in general in society. But unfortunately, we have not seen that happen so much. And this job reservation has just become a fight for getting these few jobs, because ultimately government jobs are only a few. So therefore, it has just become a fight for those few jobs, which is not really benefiting the vast majority of the backward communities in the country. And therefore, we need to think of ways and means by which the vast majority of the backward communities in the country get equal and in fact preferential access to things like education, healthcare, etc.
You always hold the view that even the Prime Minister of India should be brought under the purview of Lokpal. Now that the CBI has been terribly criticized by the Supreme Court, and even the intervention of Prime Minister's office in 2G scam report, it has been proved. So do you now think that the idea, the stand that you took now is vindicated by this?
No, in fact, our stand on of an independent anti-corruption machinery called the Lokpal has been continuously vindicated by every scam which comes out. Because every scam is happening only because of the absence of an independent anti-corruption investigating machinery.
There were talks about standing the Prime Minister out of it.
That's right. So everybody knows that the Prime Minister can also be corrupt. There is nothing to guarantee that the Prime Minister will not be corrupt. In fact, corruption is a top-down phenomenon. It flows from the top and goes to the bottom. The Prime Minister has control over his entire cabinet. Therefore, the Prime Minister, if he is honest, should be able to weed out corrupt ministers. But here we have a system where just an internet search showed that at least 15 cabinet ministers have serious corruption charges pending against them. We sent the charge sheet against them to the government, to the CBI, etc. But even 1 year later, no investigation has been done. And that is because this CBI is controlled by the very same people in that cabinet. And that is why this whole Colgate case has very starkly demonstrated that the CBI is not independent of the government and that it functions in accordance with the wishes of the government. And that is why the Supreme Court has said that, well, our first task should be to ensure to create rules which will ensure that the CBI can function independently without undue influence of the government.
Your perspective on Kashmir issue has been widely criticized by the Hindutva group, and you had to suffer an assault from their part. So did you still hold the same view on Kashmir, and did your party acknowledge it in the right way?
You see, Kashmir is a very vexed issue, partly also because of the history of Kashmir. It is in nobody's interest to continue with a situation where the vast majority of the people of Kashmir do not have confidence in the system or in the administration which governs them. And that is why it is essential to put in place, it is even more essential for Kashmir to put in place a system of decentralized direct democracy for the people of Kashmir, so that the people of Kashmir can take whatever decisions they want about their own governance, about themselves. Now, whether any state should be allowed to secede from the country or not is a very serious and vexed issue. In general, I do not subscribe to the proposition that even by a popular majority, states should be allowed to secede from the country. But where you are faced with a practical problem, if the situation becomes such that the people feel so alienated from the union that ultimately it starts taking the shape of suicide terrorism, then the country and the whole country should ponder as to what is in the best interest of the country or the union. The best solution, of course, is to win back the confidence of the people of Kashmir by giving them the right to govern themselves. That means all power of governance should be decentralized and given to the people of Kashmir, and in particular, certainly these armed forces for their internal security should not be stationed there without the consent of the people of Kashmir. That's an obvious proposition, because so far as armed forces for border security is concerned, that's a different issue. That's an issue which has to be decided by the people of this country, by the national government. But so far as for posting of army for the purpose of internal security of the people of Kashmir is concerned, that's a decision which should be made by the people of Kashmir. And in any case, I am totally opposed to this Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which gives impunity to the armed forces to commit whatever crimes without having to be accountable for it.
You don't support UAPA and AFSPA? So
no, I don't.
And there are so many human rights issues.
Yes, there are many laws in this country which are draconian and against human rights, which include the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. And I feel that Armed Forces Special Powers Act should be withdrawn and at any rate should not be retained in a state without the consent of the people of that state.
Let me come to the final question. Have your party identified areas where Aam Aadmi could make an impact on the coming parliamentary elections, and could we expect you as a candidate of Aam Aadmi?
See, our party has decided that the first elections that they will contest would be the Delhi State Assembly elections, which are going to be held this November. And if general elections are held as scheduled in May next year, then our party would contest the general elections as well, from as many parts of the country, from as many states, from as many seats as possible for us. Possible meaning wherever we have made a reasonable preparation in terms of having a party machinery in place, there we would contest the general elections, the Lok Sabha elections, if they are held on time in May next year.
What about your candidateship?
Right now I am very busy with my court work, with all my public interest cases, etc. And I feel that work is very important, which needs to be given priority right now. So ideally, I would prefer not to contest, but we will see what the situation is at that time.
Thank you very much, Prashant Bhushan, for this evening.